Ooh. Welcome back to the Netherkast. I am Cyborg, and I am joined, as always, by temporary username Shadow. Oh god, I gotta keep them short. Shad and Razor. Man, I'm in a time warp all of a sudden. I'm using full names out here. Serious business.
No one has called me Shadaloo since before you were born.
Except for that time 8 years ago.
It was a weird transitory phase in my life. I was getting out of Street Fighter.
So, the gang's all here, save for Django and Smokeman. But the original cast is here.
Yeah. This is
Back in a little clown car here.
the OGs, the classics.
Lyrical gangsters.
The green names.
Now, a funny little behind the scenes bit, because that's always fun to learn. So we were going to record something last Game Awards, so last December, and we all got together. We all started talking just in case, and we all streamed it together just in case they revealed anything from NRS. And after that was over, in disappointment, I believe I said I'll talk to you guys in a year. And in complete just kidding, because I thought we would have had something announced by now. And it has almost been a year since that time. So it's kind of funny how that all works. Time just goes so damn fast these days.
You know what? We watched the Game Awards last year because Ed might reveal something. We watched the Game Awards the year before because Ed might reveal something. We're going to watch them this year.
Yeah, you know we are.
Something.
I mean,
every year, the Game Awards is the worst day of the year for me. Because the show is so fucking bad.
I don't think I even bothered this year. I was like, anything cool happen? Everyone's like, nah.
I despise watching fucking Jeff Keighley in a competition to out-cringe his previous year. I'm so done with it, but we keep doing it, and we're gonna do it again, because Ed might reveal something.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'll be honest. I'm about 80% sure they are going to reveal the next NRS project, but that's not my actual worry. My worry is that it's just going to be PS5 Scorpion. That's why I'm not as hyped as I could be. Because if we're like,
the reveal is always just going to be a pre-rendered trailer. You know, it's going to be Scorpion and one other person fighting each other. We're not going to learn almost anything about what the game's actually about for another 3 to 6 months after that.
we need to figure out what the hottest like rap music is this year, and try and predict what the rap song in the trailer will be.
We're going to find out what a bunch of old white men in business suits think the kids like. That's what we're going to find out.
Anyways, before I forget, Jeff Keighley's basically a South Park character to me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like his smile, he's always smiling in his eyes. I don't know, but bugging out. I think South Park character. I don't know why I felt like mentioning that, but
I don't know why he puts on an awards show when what he really wants to do, and you can see in his eyes, is just spend 3 hours in front of a camera with Hideo Kojima. You know, it's all he wants in life. All this video game stuff was just to get to that.
Yeah. Oh man, I can never forgive that son of a bitch just because he really did Sub-Zero's fatality in MK9 horribly. And I'll never forgive him for that. I've mentioned that before, and I'll mention it again.
I'm still not convinced that they really used his animation. I think they had that pre-recorded, and he was miming it.
Either way, somebody has to be blamed, and I'd rather it be Jeff Keighley.
Sure. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean,
so the
reason Mortal Kombat.
The reason we're doing this episode is because it is, in fact, the 30th anniversary of the franchise.
Also, in our 8 year, some close.
Yeah, in like 2 or 3 weeks, it's our 8-year anniversary. So
we have been doing this for nearly a decade.
I know, you said 8, and I'm like, bullshit. It feels like 4.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. 5 at the most. 6, I mean, I guess. 7, you're getting a little crazy. 8 is outrageous, though.
I feel like the 2 years of COVID didn't happen.
Yeah, like, they just did not register on anyone's radar. To me, like, meeting you guys in Los Angeles for the 11 event felt like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
It's
my
not.
my brain still thinks it's 2019.
Ay.
But here we are.
And happy 30th anniversary to Mortal fucking Kombat. I can't believe
And,
we're actually here.
You son of a bitch.
I mean, we did
You
technically
broke my heart.
we did technically get something. They announced another animated movie. Are you guys looking forward to MK Legends Cage Match with Joel McHale returning as Johnny once again?
I gotta be honest here. I know I'm probably the odd duck here, but I have yet to watch any of them.
Well, I really like the first two.
And Shad gave me a free copy of the first one. And that code
man.
has remained unused. I hope
Oh,
it's
that
still...
is so... You know, I've probably got one for the second one. But get back to me on that, and I'll hook you
Yeah, I
up.
was about to say, let me wait till I get the first one under my belt.
Well, let me say this because the core thrust of this episode is going to be us reminiscing, sharing our favorite memories from the franchise. And what I really liked about the first two movies is that when I was watching them, I felt like it was the 90s again, and I was watching The Journey Begins or Defenders of the Realm. It reminded me of being like 9 years old.
Right, me too.
Granted, with blood and guts, but...
And a bit less jumping.
It's just nice to see MK tournaments in animation again.
It is.
It feels right, and it feels like it's something I've been missing for way too long.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I haven't felt super compelled to watch it was just because, I don't know, I was not in love with the animation style from the trailers I watched. It always kind of rang true to me that it was very cheaply... I don't know, maybe it's just not my bag. I mean,
that's fair. Like, the style of the first two movies had very, like, sharp, angled features on the characters. The big black shapes for cheekbones and knuckles.
And the knuckles, the knuckles.
It was definitely
remember.
stylized. It was definitely a particular artist's style, and not like I don't know, necessarily more mainstream generic house style that you might see in another animated thing like...
I want Pixar Mortal Kombat.
I mean, I felt it was a style that worked. I wouldn't have called it cheap, but then the last one came along, and you see them actually recycling entire, bits of animation. Like, we watched Sub-Zero get up and wash his face, 3 times. Spoilers for a movie that's not even out yet, but yeah.
I don't want to get into Snowblind too much, because it hasn't technically been released, but yeah, that one is actively cheap looking.
Yes, it is. Unfortunately.
I don't understand the style of having the visible lines extending outward from the characters, like their outlines are sketchy. That looks weird and wrong in animation. But yeah, that's I recommend the first two. They're actually pretty good.
Yeah, I know for sure I'll get around to watching all of them. I just gotta wait for that hype wave to come for me. But
I think it'll be worth your time.
For sure, yeah.
Seeing the second tournament, the MK2 tournament, actually adapted by something for the first time ever was just worth the price of admission for me alone.
I got a question. So that first one of the things that stood out to me was odd, and maybe you don't remember or not, but I remember the trailer for that first one, and they had Cyrax shooting missiles. Did that end up being the case in the actual finished version?
That's the second one.
Yeah.
Second one.
The Sector and Cyrax's weapons are kind of treated as interchangeable in the fight scenes.
What? I'm just kidding.
I think Sector shoots a net and Cyrax shoots a missile.
Oh my!
They do.
See,
yes.
the missile itself was rough. Now you're taking Sector shooting nets. Come on, man. I mean, I get it. Like they're all
off an assembly
cyborgs
line,
and stuff, whatever. Yeah, I totally get it's whatever, but still, I mean, these characters, in a way, they should struggle to be to stand out from each other, and you're not doing them any favors by not making their movesets, unique.
Like, if you're gonna use the person, have them use their trademark move, right?
Right, it's a simple thing.
Why not?
I didn't see the scene, so now I'm almost curious. Was it really could you not have them use the correct things? Like, was it really pertinent to the scene to have them
No,
use
they were
Not especially.
in the scene where they shoot the net, and I'm pretty sure Sector's the one who shoots it. Cyrax is standing right next to him.
It'd be hilarious
is
if
the one to
Cyrex
shoot
was
the net.
shooting the missile while he shot the net. It's like if you just move them a little bit of
If
degree
you just
to the right.
reverse the colors,
Yeah.
that's all it would take.
Yeah. So that kind of bugs me as obviously a big fan of Cyrax at least, but
Maybe someone swapped 2 post-it notes or something. Fucking message
I
got
mean-
lost in transit.
I think it's like a mixture of, MKX kind of did them dirty and Beyond Triborg, which, obviously Triborg has its fans and whatnot. But then you go to MK11 where they are having such awesome showings in the story mode, I thought, for Sector and Cyrax.
Decent
They look
designs.
badass. Yeah, they look badass. And Sector especially, had some cool moments. It's like,
And you can't even fucking
them-
play as them.
yeah, to not even have them playable, but then to have an animated movie where you just like can't even put forth the effort of giving them the right fucking special attacks. Like, you're not gonna fuck up Sub-Zero and have him using he's not gonna throw his hat, across the screen or something. So why do that with the cyborg? So I just hate seeing them get fucking overlooked, but whatever. Not a big deal.
I don't know.
It's a big deal. No, I'm just kidding.
I kind of enjoyed the throwback to the days when Sector and Cyrax didn't matter, and Smoke was the robot who did. But that's just me personally.
I
None of them matter.
I did like the emphasis on him, but yes, he's right.
Sad day. I saw when Ed Boon got asked on Twitter recently during one of his ask end start end things, asked if Smoke would be in the next one, and he was like, "What do you mean by next one?" That's a loaded question. What do you mean by next one? That
Yeah,
can mean anything.
I think he just didn't want to admit whether the next game would be Mortal Kombat or Injustice or something else. That's
Right.
That was his way of being clever about that.
Those Q&A sessions were just excuses for him to repeatedly tell the fan base, I can't tell you anything.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got.
Anything. I can't tell you anything.
It was definitely a waste of time.
Yeah.
And wasn't it sort of advertised as an AMA for Ed Boon,
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
which stands for Ask Me Anything?
Ask me anything and I will give you no answers.
I really wish I'd been able to
ask.
get on while he was actually having those. I wanted to pepper him with grid questions.
Nobody's going to stop you from asking. I just don't have to answer.
Yeah, it's ask me anything, not I have to tell you anything.
He knows what he's in for whenever he does these.
Yeah.
He does it on purpose. That's the gag.
Yeah.
Engage the fan base, keep them on the hook, but spoil nothing. It's
In a way, he's fulfilling the function of being a hype man in a really roundabout way.
He did say he'd be retired in 10 years, so we only got a couple more games coming from him.
I mean, that's just numbers. He is 55-ish, so
He looks good. He aged well.
What day is he born on? Who knows it without Googling it? Because I've Googled it already. Anybody know his birthday?
I don't know.
It's a quiz for you.
No idea.
April the 1st.
It's February 22nd,
Damn.
which I remember because it's the day before mine. But
Oh, there you go.
so it's easier for me to remember. But 1964 is the year, so he is currently 58 years old. So yeah, that does check out. Technically, in 7 years, he should be retired based on average retirement.
That's enough time to
I mean-
make 2 games?
Let's face
Ish,
it.
yeah.
The man is rich. He can retire whenever the fuck he wants.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
if I had his money, there's no way I'd still be employed. I'd just be sitting back.
I have
Same.
to believe that he is still working because he actually enjoys the job and loves being part of it and still loves Mortal Kombat. Why wouldn't he?
Well, they
Which
actually
is-
asked him what his favorite games were, and he said MK2 and Mortal Kombat Deception.
That's what he said?
Yeah,
Nice.
He loves Deception. He likes the way that game plays.
Was
So-
that in his Ask Me Anythings on Twitter? Because I could have sworn he said he wouldn't give an answer to his favorite Mortal Kombat because he didn't want to, I don't know. He didn't actually explain why he couldn't answer. He just said, I can't answer that because of reasons. I thought maybe he didn't want to
This
upset
was-
WB by saying an older game.
Yeah, he can't, if I say not 9 and not 11, they'll get mad at me.
Well, okay, I'm glad you mentioned that because actually, I misspoke. I'm looking at the article now. This was in December 2020. So he actually said MK3, not MK2.
Huh.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, we give Ed a lot of flack, but as a game designer, I have no doubt he's passionate. As a programmer who wants to make an enjoyable experience, I do think like he does have an emotional investment in that, right?
I think his favorite aspect of it is being able to use all these like guest characters that he's a big fan of, as well as the DC characters, because I feel like he's a lot more passionate about that. Not that he's not passionate about Mortal Kombat. We've joked around in the past and even used the title, Ed Boon is bored with Mortal Kombat.
Well, I think that is true, though, because as a game designer, you do want to make new stuff. You do want to try new things, right?
I absolutely do believe that when WB went, hey, can we put a Terminator in Mortal... He jumped over the table and screamed yes while shaking the guy by the lapels. Because he loves
they all love it.
Oh, yeah.
They love it. That if there's anything, the fans, at least us diehards, we're not always a big fan of it, mainly because, it takes up spots that we, for characters we really want to see.
Yep, fuck yes.
But from their perspective, they're getting to actually design characters they love. I would probably feel the same too, to be honest. Like if you had a character that I grew up loving, like I don't know, like Predator or whatever, that's not for me. But you know what I mean? Like say it was like Jason Voorhees or whatever, I would absolutely be over the moon to be able to make a game with them too. So I can't blame them. But yeah, I don't think they are faking it by any means.
No, it's like you're taking your favorite G.I. Joe and your favorite Thundercats figures and you're smacking them together the way you were when you were a kid. Same impulse. Yeah. Have fun with your shit.
Yep.
I think Ed likes it because it's the closest he can get under WB's ball and chain to making games about other franchises.
Right.
Possibly.
He has gone on record of saying he would make a full horror character fighting game, but I don't know if that would sell or not. Who knows?
I definitely think there's a market for it. Like that Friday the 13th game was extremely low budget. That was an indie development title, and it was hugely successful for the small window it was allowed to exist before the rights lawsuit shut it down.
Hurts my heart. Still,
and
it's been 2009 since the last Friday the 13th movie.
Like, Dead by Daylight is not a good game, in my opinion, but people seem to really enjoy the ability to play Freddy and Michael and
all the other characters. They have like everything now except for Jason. Yeah,
they have everybody but Jason, yeah.
You put Freddy and Jason and maybe also Michael Myers on a box, people are going to buy it. Those are household names.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it takes.
Well, the internet has done horror films a lot of favors as well. Like, we all recognize, like, John Carpenter's The Thing is one of the best horror movies ever made. If not the best, right?
I'm actually going to be having a horror movie night at my place in about a couple of weeks, and a couple of friends of mine have never seen The Thing. I'm looking forward to it.
Dude, I love doing that. As a matter of fact, I can't watch that anymore. Like, I can't see The Thing by myself anymore because I've had to watch it like 14 times because I kept finding friends who had never seen it, right? So, but that was an internet phenomenon. Like, when I was growing up, no one knew about The fucking Thing. It wasn't until like around 2006.
Critics hated it when it came out.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ebert was being Roger Ebert, right? Like, he was doing the typical Ebert bullshit.
Eberting all over it.
But once people got, like, BitTorrent, surprise, everyone fucking loved John Carpenter's The Thing, right? I watched that movie on a burn disc for the first time.
It's finally getting the appreciation it deserves, yes.
And Carpenter with it. So, yeah, I think the time is... I said in that horror podcast we did, where we were talking about a potential horror fighting game. I don't think that was the theme of the podcast, but we segued into that. And I said the final boss of such a game should be John Carpenter's The Thing. That should be the final boss.
Where was I during this conversation?
You were there. We were talking about that because we were built.
Sounds like a graveyard episode type of conversation.
Well, I think it started as another cast and it turned into a graveyard, I think. But it was an official Netherkast episode because we were speculating on what MK11 was going to be.
Some of them have gone that way.
Before I forget, does anybody feel like Ed Boon looks like maybe Breast Poet's dad?
What the fuck?
I don't know. I think Brusk looks a little bit... If Brusk had a mustache, he'd be Tobias with weird hair.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a combination of Ed Boon and John Tobias. Maybe just one lonely night, you know.
Damn.
Under the light of a pit moon with a shadow over it. Romance is in the air.
I don't know. Just a thought I've had for years. Just figured I'd vocalize.
I mean,
it.
if that's true, then Bresk is wasting his potential.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not to derail the conversation.
No,
Well,
it's
I'm not one bit surprised that Deception is one of Ed's favorite games, because if you divorce gameplay from the topic, Deception is easily my favorite Mortal Kombat. Like, free. Like, nothing even compares, right?
If you put the gameplay aside, you said?
Yeah, 100%.
Well,
I would not play
I
Deception.
I would say
Yeah.
if you look at the gameplay, like he kind of picked the 3 games that each represents the culmination of its era's engine.
Yeah.
MK3 is the best playing out of 1, 2, and 3. Well, Ultimate is at least. Deception is the best playing out of DA Deception and Armageddon, and X is the best playing, maybe it or 9.
Well,
Depending on,
Deception is a...
your subjective opinion about certain mechanics.
I am partial to Armageddon myself. I think from a gameplay perspective, that is my favorite of the 3. But Armageddon is a fun house. Like, that game is crazy.
Armageddon has too much jank.
And I would argue it's actually more balanced than Deception. But that's because Smoke is that broken. Dairu is that broken in Deception.
Yeah.
You actually have like 7 characters who are viable in Armageddon.
Of course.
It's really more like 3. It's like Jade, Dairu, and there's like one more I'm leaving out. But it's and Drummond. Drummond's also, I think, the number 3 in that game.
Yeah, the Tombstone drop never stopped being fucking broke.
Yeah. But yeah, if you ask me which one I'd rather play, it's gonna be Armageddon all day, right? But I think in terms of like a realized vision, Mortal Kombat Deception is my favorite Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
game.
I think when you take into account all of the extra modes, like Deception has the best conquest, it has the best mini games.
Even without like considering gameplay at all, it's got the most to offer, like blow for blow. Huge conquest mode, chess, puzzle fighter, so many characters people wanted to see coming back. It was hours
it has
and
the
hours
best,
of fun.
well, how would I put this?
Most replay value?
One of the best launch
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat game. It had the most impact of any launch.
It has the most new characters out of any of the 3D era games, and Ed's favorite thing is making new characters.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Ugh.
And something about the atmosphere just felt like really spot
Well,
on.
I've said this before. Deadly Alliance recaptures the aesthetics of MK1, and Deception recaptures the aesthetics of MK2. And MK2, aesthetically, that's why it's the most popular of the original trilogy games, is because of the aesthetics of Outworld, all the purple skies and the weird Japanese / horror stage imagery, all that stuff.
Right.
There's also, like, the 3D era was very big on trying to get back to the MK1, the design motif of basing characters off things from old Shaw Brothers movies. Like, more characters in Deception than any other game are based on some old kung fu movie.
Well, you know what made Deadly Alliance so special at the time was that it was the official end of the palette swaps. You could argue that was also to some extent MK4, but I mean, let's be real, like, there was a lot of reused assets in MK4, right? But even seeing the concept art for Deadly Alliance was a big deal. It's like, oh my god, that's the new Sub-Zero. That's the new Scorpion. That's the new Kano.
I would have said that the official end to the palette swap era was probably Deception. Like, Scorpion Sub stopped looking exactly alike in 4, and they look completely different in Deadly Alliance. But when Deception comes out, and you've got Ermac and Smoke and Scorp and Sub in the same game, and Noob Saibot, and they all look completely different, that's when you know they're trying to put so much effort into like revitalizing and fleshing out every character to the best that they can be away from each other.
Well, that was the explosion of Deception, right? So it's like we have Deadly Alliance, it's like, oh my god, so we can actually have new costumes now. We can actually have an older Sub-Zero with the MK3 costume. That was crazy back then, right?
Yeah, I mean,
what's going to happen now with like Smoke or Ermac? And then when it did happen, it was insane. It's still kind of insane, to be honest with you.
Like in terms of fleshing out the characters that like Tobias had never gotten around to, and he said on Twitter, he's like, I never had anything for Noob Saibot or Ermac, and I'm very impressed that they made them full characters after I left. That was all the 3D era. The 3D era is the most creative, in a positive direction, era in the entire franchise. Like 9X and 11, there's been a lot of nostalgia. There's been a lot of retelling old stories. There's been a lot of sticking to the MK2 roster. The 3D era was the most creative, the most new stuff that doesn't suck. You know, depending on your opinion, you know, people are going to be like, oh, but Suhao and Dairu and Cobra. Yeah, okay. Some of those characters aren't great, but they fit the flavor of MK more than, like, Chronica does.
Well, also, answer more questions than
At least they
anything.
look like kung fu characters. That's all I'm saying.
I will not sit here silent as you besmirch the damn good name of Chronica.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah. I just want to put my mouth. So what are your favorite memories?
Talking to who? Who are you talking to?
Ollie is fuckers. And we here tonight to actually discuss the things we love about the game.
Well,
which game? Which game?
Let's
The
establish
series?
a little bit of
All of them.
structure. Let's do a little bit of structure. Let's say starting with MK1, starting with Cyborg, and going around. How about that?
Round table.
I was hoping we just shout our favorite things as loud as we could. All at the same
No, I'd say Temp starts, and then one of us cuts him off, and then he goes, "Yeah."
Yeah. Go on. Yes. Huh?
10 seconds of doing exactly what Temp just said. 10 seconds of just yelling things we enjoy.
And then we move on to the next game. We do that for each game. You know,
All right.
It's not relegated to Mortal Kombat. We can just shout things like sunlight or cookies. It doesn't have to be MK.
Do you love the lamp?
I love lamb.
why would you not? Who doesn't enjoy a good lamp? Anyways, okay. So me first, and we're talking about Mortal Kombat 1, things I enjoy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, MK1, what I love about it the most. Well, first of all, the select screen music is awesome. Still one of my favorites. Probably like my second favorite of the series. Entire series, select screen music. And obviously we use that for our intro music for quite some time, and I think still to this day. So that says a lot about that. That was obviously the first game I played when I was 3 years old. I put this on Twitter, and I mentioned it a long time ago when we kind of talked about when we first got into the series. But for me, Mortal Kombat 1 was the first one I played at the young age of 3 in 1993. And I know I was that young because I moved the following year away from that area, like to a different state. So I know for sure it was when I was that young, and I still have fond memories of it. I have two older brothers, one that's 4 years older and one that's 8 years older. And the one that's 8 years older than me at the time was big into MK. So we went and played it at the neighbor's house, who was right next to us. And we were in just a shitty part of town in Iowa. And it was just a rundown, fucking miserable town. Glad we got the hell out of there. It was a complete shithole house. But anyways, we went over to the neighbors, and they had a Super Nintendo. So I specifically remember, at least just watching people play, I remember being enamored by the select screen icons, like their backgrounds, like the sun behind Liu Kang, fire behind Scorpion, kind of like that mysterious purplish, ice-ish whatever behind Sub-Zero. Like that's the kind of, and the lights behind Johnny Cage. Like, I don't know, as a little, toddler basically at that point in my life, I just was enamored by the arts and just the colors and the pictures and just like, oh, what does that say about the character, and like it just how it represents it. I don't know. I've always loved that stuff, and that's why I've made mention of it in years later, on this podcast or just on YouTube videos leading up to MK11, that I wish those kind of personality things were back in the select screen behind the characters and whatnot, because that to me is one of my first memories in life in general. Like, I remember Super Mario Bros., I remember Tecmo Super Bowl, and I remember Mortal Kombat. Those are the three games that I remember from as early as it gets for me, because, I mean, usually you don't start making memories till 2 or 3 years old. So for me, that is one of the earliest memories of my life. So Mortal Kombat has always been in my life to some degree. And, you know, I played the other games growing up as well. Mortal Kombat 2 on Super Nintendo. Also an MK3, a friend owned on Sega Genesis. So I'd go over to his house and play that. And then Mortal Kombat 4, I rented on N64. My brother had a Dreamcast. So got gold eventually. And then Deadly Alliance is when I joined, you know, MK5.org and joined and start talking to all these fine folks that I'm doing the podcast with in 2001. So, I mean, for me, it's just been, I don't know life without Mortal Kombat, you know? So to me, it's always in the back of my mind to some degree. And I know I just dumped a lot of shit. So circling back to Mortal Kombat 1, I just love that shit. I don't know. It just feels so fucking like nostalgic to me more than any of the other games. Mortal Kombat 1, it may not like, it may be like one of the least fun to play to this day just because it doesn't hold up super well because it's so slow. But man, is it still just, when I see that game start up and the opening screen, the start screen, and then the select screen pops up and you hear that music and you have the cement background and all the stage design and the characters and the sound effects, Ed Boon doing the narrator voice, fucking all of that, just so nostalgic. So I think out of all the games, it's still the most nostalgia to me. Anyways, I think Razor's next.
That was beautiful.
So, I mean, I've told stories on the podcast before of how I got into it. You know, it was like 1993. I'm in 4th grade, and there's ads and like not walkthroughs, but like pictures of the moves and fatalities in magazines like EGM. And that's where I first saw the characters of like Mortal Kombat 2 I saw first. And it was just so vivid and colorful, but also mixed with dark. Like it was dark, but it wasn't desaturated. Everything like just really popped. And like that combination of realistic, like you could tell it was made out of photography, but the digitization process made it look like animation. Like it made them look more sharp and cartoony, and it just was such a unique visual style. And then you mix that with these like expressive superpowers they all have and the bloody finishing moves. It was just so attention grabbing. You couldn't look at it and not be drawn toward it.
Right.
And I got into that. So like 2 was out in the arcades and 1 was out on the home consoles. And as a kid, I didn't get to go to the arcade very much because my parents hated driving to the mall. So I saw 2 first, but I played 1 first. And that it pretty much snowballed from there. And I had the SNES version of 1 because the Genesis sucks.
Yeah. The fucking sound.
But I actually, you know, I've said before, I enjoy some of the Nintendo quote-unquote censored versions of the fatalities. Particularly, I think Raiden's is much cooler than popping the head. I'd rather have the skull and bones and turning to powder. But like I guess my favorite thing about 1, and the thing that I am the most nostalgic for, would be the soundtrack. Like that sort of Asian funk sound that you'd get out of like 70s movies. You know, the waka chicka waka chicka waka chicka waka chicka, that stuff.
Yeah.
Really, that's the part that I hold most dear in my heart.
It's the most Big Trouble in Little China for sure. Like it just feels so awesome.
Shat?
I'm up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I first became aware of Mortal Kombat, like I've been saying on Twitter lately, because of the advertisements in comics. Like as a kid around that time, I was reading a lot of like Spider-Man, a lot of Batman. And I think in this scenario, in this case, I was actually reading like some of the earliest Venom appearances, like when he first comes back and like tries to like kill Peter Parker and, you know, whatnot. And I saw like the ad, I think it was for the home console versions, although it might be the arcade, I don't know. I might have actually seen original arcade ads in comics, because I was reading comics since at least 88 or 89, so probably. But the thing I do recall, the first thing I ever saw was just the character select screen picture ad, where it's the 7 cast members and it's Goro and it's got the dragon logo on there. And I can remember just sitting and staring into like the eyes of each of these people. And I was like, every one of these people looks so interesting. Like you were saying, Cyborg, like the lights behind Johnny, the detail. Each picture seems to just pop out and kind of tell a story on its own. And I kind of instantly wanted to know more about all of them. But you know,
Right.
like you, Razor, I was too young to go to arcades at that point. I kept up with like news about the series, and I remember the controversy. I remember like seeing a news report on like how this evil game was influencing the children and the youth, and there's this horrible predator character who rips. I remember this. They described Kano as a predator-ish character who rips his opponent's heart out. You know, you tell a kid something's bad and they just want to learn more and more about it. That's the way it was with me. So, I did not actually have an MK1 arcade machine around any of our local arcades, some of which were, you know, nice little places in malls, and others were complete fucking drug-fueled cesspits. So, eventually MK2 comes out, and shortly after it did, there was a little video store, which is now a hair salon, around the corner from my place on 6th Avenue in LaSalle back in the day. And they had 2 arcade machines in the back. They had a Tecmo fighter, I think it was, called Martial Champion. And they had Mortal Kombat 2. And I pumped endless quarters into that son of a bitch. So after like playing MK2 for a week or so, I was like, okay, the first one's out, I gotta go find it. And I had a Super Nintendo because, yes, Genesis did kind of suck. I remember that it took me a little while to get a copy because they were all pretty expensive and both my mom and my dad were kind of poor, but I finally got a copy that had no instruction manual from like a video store that was selling theirs around Christmas, I believe it was. And then I quickly learned that the SNES version sucked and it had no like blood or anything. So I got a Game Genie specifically to turn all the fucking sweat red. And it was still so utterly unsatisfying. But I still had a lot of fun with it, although at that very same video store, at the time as well, since I'd heard the Genesis version was superior, I'd regularly go in there and like plonk down like $5 to rent a Genesis for an hour and play it up front on their TV. And I'd enter the dullard code and the ABAC blood code and, you know, all that shit. And so I kind of played both versions simultaneously back and forth for a long time. At the same time, I was looking Mortal Kombat 2. I'd be pretty hard-pressed to name a single favorite thing about every one of these games we're about to talk about, but when it comes to one, I think that my favorite standout moment is after finishing the hell that is like the 3rd endurance round fight. You're not given any break. It's just wham, Goro just drops down and you're right into it. Oh shit, oh god, oh fuck. It's such a wonderful moment. Oh, memories. Fighting Reptile. The struggle to fight Reptile. Believing the lies from Mortal Kombat 2 that there were hidden characters that no one had discovered so that they'd make you play the game more often. I once sat down with my SNES for like 5 frickin' hours trying to get flawless victories and fatalities on every stage. I was not a bright child. Just see if I could like fight Jade or Smoke if they were actually in that game, which of course they were not. But yeah, those are some of my memories. Temp?
Yeah, if I had to name like a standout thing about MK1 that is my favorite thing, I kind of have 1.5 answers to this. Probably my favorite thing about MK1 is it is such a peak moment of the arcade era. Razor kind of alluded to this, but the Genesis version of Mortal Kombat 1 had blood, but also the Genesis version of MK1 was trash. So if you wanted to play a good, complete version of Mortal Kombat, you just had to go to the arcades. And now, eventually, like the arcade quality and the console quality hit a merging point, which I would say is probably around the Dreamcast era, is where I would say when they kind of became comparable. But that just was not true in the early 90s. So you had to leave your house and go to the arcade if you wanted to play MK1, because the disparity between the consoles and the arcade was just massive. And MK1 is still beautiful. If you see an MK1 cabinet, that game still looks really good. So if I had to like narrow it down, I'd say it's the arcade experience. But if I want to give it even, here's where the 0.5 comes in. There's something cohesive about MK1 that I feel like was lost with MK2. Obviously, I prefer MK2 as a whole, just because that's really where the canon sort of fleshes out and it becomes like a consistent living thing. But to me, it was very clear that something was in MK1 that did not survive the transition in MK2. And I've always valued that. I don't really know how I would articulate that completely. I can only articulate that partially. But just something about the fatalities, the aesthetic, and even the colors were just very satisfying in a way that felt slightly cheaper in MK2. Now that's okay because MK2 did literally every single other thing better. And is by far the better game in my opinion. But I kind of knew in my head, like, we're not ever going to be able to really dispense with MK1, which is weird coming from me because I fucking hate Sonya and Kano. I hate them both. I cannot stand those characters. I mean, if it were up to me, they would have been in the chains in Shao Kahn's arena forever, but it wasn't up to me. So, yeah, those are my 1.5 favorite things about MK1 is that it was such an experience among the experiences of the arcade era. And there's something unspeakable about it. There's this intangible about it that I think did not survive throughout the rest of the series. And they never replicated ever again, which is, again, that's okay because that intangible is Mortal Kombat is more than just that one intangible, but there is definitely something unique about that game. So, yeah.
It never again felt like you were actually playing like a Shaw Brothers action film come to life.
I would say there's moments of DA and Deception where they have that flavor.
No, but I mean like the actual experience of it being a movie, a film. There's something really, really cinematic about MK1 in kind of the graininess and like the low budget feel.
Yeah, there is something about the way MK1 looks where it's like cheap, but not cheap the way a bad one like Bloodstorm is cheap. It like still looks good. And it's hard to articulate. Yeah.
There's a heaviness to it. There's a weight to the movement and to the specials as well.
I think
like
a lot of it
too, yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with how sharp the sprites are. Like in all those other fighting games that came out after MK that tried to copy the digitized actors look, there's something blurry or lower quality about the character sprites and the backgrounds that MK1 just really looks sharp. And it's like whatever Tobias was doing to clean them up after they took the footage and put it in the computer, he was a one-of-a-kind artist.
There's even a speed to MK1 that makes it feel heavier to me. That makes it feel more intense, right? Like in MK2, when I do a fatality, like the fatality looks cool and is conceptually cool. But in MK1, when I do Sub-Zero's head rip, it's like, holy shit, I just killed a guy, right? You never got that really ever again in Mortal Kombat. And I think that's especially gone in MKX. Like the fatalities in MKX, I feel like I'm just watching like a really shitty horror film. I'm watching like Hostel, right? That's like, so MK1 I feel like was uniquely good at that.
There's something much more dignified about just killing a guy in one swift stroke rather than like making a whole fucking interpretive dance out of it, you know? I've been saying this for years and years.
I think there's also an effect of like over time you get desensitized, honestly. Like not in the way they said children would be from playing violent games, but in the way of like a fatality can never shock me again. Because I've seen too many of them. I'm too old and I've been here for too long playing too many MK games. There's nothing new you can really do with a fatality. I think some of the things in X where they're like ripping throats out and making gurgling noises, like some of the like X was the first one that had intestines and disemboweling, and I think, you know, a couple of those touches got close to that feeling of holy shit, that's really fucking gross. But none of them get the effect of like
shocking you.
Seeing a spine rip for the first time. You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
part of it is being like 8, 10, or 11 years old and like watching Jason or Freddy rip a guy to pieces. Your reaction to it then is not the same as a reaction when you're like, you're in your 40s and you've seen this shit,
Oh, I would also say though, like as an adult watching violent or horror movie media now, sometimes things still make me go, oh shit, and it's usually because of a surprise element. And you only get that surprise if it happens really fast. Like if the killer comes out of nowhere and snaps a guy in half in one move, that's where you get that, oh shit, I didn't see that coming reaction. You're not going to get that if it takes 15 minutes to do a finisher.
Yeah, even though a fatality can't shock me anymore, a fatality can still be cool. And I don't know, like, I think MKX, I want to be careful not to pull this into a whole tangent on what's wrong with modern fatalities. But in MKX, almost none of the fatalities are cool. They're just exhibitions. Like, they're just weird and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Except for maybe like Sub-Zero's like Ice Spike fatality. That still has some jazz to it. I still think that's all right. For the majority of them, though, I think MKX is a misunderstanding on what people like about MK1 and MK2 fatalities, right?
I don't know. I think X has better finishers than 11, definitely.
It depends.
I can't think of a single one in 11 that has really stuck with me. I can't even remember most of them.
Kung Lao's MK4 stage fatality, I would say, is probably my favorite in that game.
I can think of one.
Devora's also is one of the best fatalities.
The Devora, yeah, the Thing one, yeah.
Yeah, that fatality is brilliant, but the rest of them are, yeah.
Can't even.
But I love the MK4 homage with Kung Lao. I thought that was really good and really funny.
I guess Cabal's, where he hooks you and runs and your face scrapes off on the road, is...
That was pretty good.
It is good, but it takes too long. Like, I think it starts out really good, and then I think it becomes...
But, like, it's just, that one is very much a, like, why hasn't he done this sooner? It's kind of the most obvious way to kill a guy if you have super speed.
Yeah.
That's my feeling of that one. It feels like it could have been a classic.
Exactly, yeah.
Kano in the Glass Bottle was a nice one.
It was good.
Not what I call a classic, but it was entertaining. I'll give it.
Yeah, I mean the ones that I like now are the ones that stand out because there's something silly about them, like Kano dancing with the body or Johnny's. Those are the ones that stand out because you're not going to get the oh shit, but maybe you can make me laugh.
A good fatality should have personality to it, which is what the Kano and Devora fatalities have.
For sure.
But I think this is why we all like brutality so much more now that they have them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So MK1.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we have a lot of games to go.
Let's say we might want.
This might be a bad time to tell you, but I kind of have a cutoff tonight. We might have to break this up in multiple parts.
Maybe we should limit ourselves to the trilogy or the first four.
I think first 4 is good.
I can go all the way to 4.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. I do.
You know what? We'll do this. We'll do this episode as like anniversary part 1 because it's the anniversary of the games.
Yeah.
And then we'll do anniversary part 2 for our 8-year anniversary. How about that?
That works, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Cyborg.
So MK2 is where we're at now. First, I want to correct myself on a little bit because I looked up the MK1 select screen. I said there was purple behind Sub-Zero and MK1. It's more like a tealish, so I was wrong. And behind Scorpion is not fire. It is just like gray deadness, which also kind of is to my point that it speaks to the personality. But I think I was getting those mixed up with MK2 because Scorpion has fire behind him in MK2, and Sub-Zero is more of like a bluish purplish in MK2. Anyways, just figured I'd correct that because why not? MK2.
MK fans are anal about these things. It's true.
Okay, man. Who doesn't appreciate good angle? So MK2, I really love the select screen music once again. Probably top 3 still for me in the franchise. Not number 1. We have yet to get to that, but I think this is probably my 3rd favorite in the franchise for select screen music. And damn it, you know what? Select screen music is so damn important. I've stressed this enough in like videos and podcasts prior, but like when you're selecting your fighter, I mean, this is a screen you see most in the game. Like you're selecting your fighter, so that music has to be hype. It has to get your blood going, get you, get you really excited for the next fight. So I think that's very important, and I really love the MK2 theme music. Other thoughts about it. I love the contrast like of the game, like the actual visual contrast in terms of the darks are darks, the lights are lights. Like it's very colorful, like Shad said for MK1. In more modern MKs, it gets very drab, especially with MKX. That was one of our biggest complaints for that game is all the colors were very muted. But an MK2 is a prime example of just very colorful, but also dark. So I think there's a good contrast there. And I think that game nails it. And I just love the aesthetics of MK2. And I think every MK game should be studying MK2 in terms of how to visually design an MK game and have it be successful. Other than that, I love the gameplay of MK2. It's that along with Ultimate MK3 is still like the MKs that I enjoy playing the most. I'll go back and play it over like MAME or Fightcade recently. A friend of mine that likes Mortal Kombat. I've played on the Fightcade 2. I've played all those old ones with him recently. So those are always still fun for me to go back and play. And MK2 is definitely a lot of fun. Other than that, I mean, that's pretty much it, I guess, in terms of just what I love about that game so much.
All right. I guess the thing that stands out the most to me about MK2 would have to be the arenas, the environment, the purples and the oranges and the atmosphere of Outworld, and how it managed to be like, it's like fantasy and it's spooky, it's not like, there can be a tendency for like a horror thing to focus more on like you're in a dark room and you can't see anything, and everything is like super visible, even though you're fighting at night in almost every arena. But there's just so much vivid color, and it's like it's a very unique world compared to like other, I guess, like medieval, like Dungeons and Dragons-y types of settings because of just how expressive and vividly colorful it is.
Right.
Because like you watch Lord of the Rings, and when they're in Mordor, everything's very gray and ashy. There are a few times where you see like the bad guys' environment, and it's, I don't know, not a lot of gray and brown and black.
Right.
So yeah, that always like was the most eye-catching thing about MK2. And I mean, obviously that's the biggest difference between it and 1. That and, they took every character and just everything that was in 1 but more. So yeah, I guess that's it for me.
That's it? All right.
Well, I guess it's also the most memorable thing, the thing I have the most nostalgia for.
I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing my favorite thing from each game, basically.
It can be what you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. There's no rules.
No. But, like I was saying before, little video store, arcade machine in the back, and that's where I learned how to play, like, Mortal Kombat for the first time. And it was, like, the mythical thing you hear about, right? Like, the older kids had, like, their textbook full of all the inputs and the secret fatalities, and the fatalities no one was supposed to know about. The naked ones, the nudalities, and the animalities. Just a bunch of bullshit to, like, try to get, like, the 10-year-old kids like myself to pay them $5 to, like, memorize this stupid 25-button combination. Like, that's what I remember, like, the nudalities were, like, up, up, down, down, left, 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 right, 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 up, down, up, high kick, high punch, kick, 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 block, block, block. Stupid shit like that, right?
I remember when I did, on occasion, get to be at the arcade and play MK2, I'd be there with a magazine with the moves in it, and some 15 or 16-year-old would come up and style on me and do a finisher off the top of his head. I always fucking hated it. I would never see anybody in there with their fucking notes but me.
Well, I swiftly went from being styled on to styling. I got good at MK2 really quick, and I made it my mission to get good with everyone, and I succeeded. Except Reptile, fuck that guy, he was terrible. But the thing I fell in love with about the game, I mean, what kept me playing wasn't just like ripping people's heads off. That was a huge part of it, but like the character designs continued to absolutely captivate me. The sheer atmosphere that Mortal Kombat 2 oozes, you know? How every stage feels a different way, how dank and rotten the Deadpool feels. The living force used to just give me nightmares after nightmares of being lost in this awful place with trees ready to eat me. To this day, I feel like if you told me that the people at WB Montreal were like designing a living force right now, I'd do like a line of coke, run in, kick down the door, and go, "No, you're doing it wrong. I'll show you how." There's this idealized version of the living forest in my mind that exists, and it all comes from my childhood nightmares. That game left such an impression on me in every single way possible. I fell in love with all the characters, the entire universe, just the gameplay, day in and day out. And when it came out on home systems, I didn't stop. I mainlined MK2 until MK3 came out in the arcades, day in, day out. I can't tell you the amount of times I beat it in the arcades. I can't tell you the amount of times I fought Jade and Smoke. I think I might have actually asked the guy to put it on free play one day so I could actually beat up like a non-existent player 2 one Sunday morning to fight Noob Saibot myself. Seriously. Man. Shit. So many good memories. Just falling in love with the story, the setting, the characters. MK2 was what did it all for me. Half of it was at the arcades, half of it was at home. And that's also about the time I started noticing like the music was really interesting. Although I don't think it would be until MK3 where it really started to make me take notice. But some stuff like the Khan Arena theme, the Portal theme, those definitely became earworms. That's about the time I started buying all like the strategy guides too, and learning the older kids were full of shit. And I still have like 3 or 4 Mortal Kombat 2 super books and strategy guides from that time. I can see them right now, turning my head to the left on my bookshelf over there. I ain't never letting those things go. Such things dreams are made of. Mortal Kombat 2 is still one of my favorite games of all time. Temp?
So I think out of all the games, Mortal Kombat 2 is the easiest. Probably the most memorable and most important thing and favorite thing about Mortal Kombat 2 is Reptile being playable. That was such a big deal. That was a massively, massively huge deal. And it's not just a huge deal because, like, there was a very clear demand created for the character in MK1. But Reptile becoming playable is almost a symbol of a time when, like, the Mortal Kombat developers, well, let me phrase it like this. The fans would ask for something and want something, and the developers would actually give it to them. Like, that's what Mortal Kombat 2 Reptile represents for me, right? So, yeah, just being able to play that character was its own small miracle. And not only were we able to play him, but he had original moves and original fatalities. It was like sort of like the prototype for graduating from being a palette swap, even if he still technically was, right? So, yeah, that was a really, really big deal at the time. And I guess just as a whole, Mortal Kombat 2 was sort of when the characters came to life. That's when, in Mortal Kombat 1, the characters they're cool, but they're nebulous, right? The best things about them are still kind of implied. In Mortal Kombat 2, you see the decisions they make. Scorpion protects Sub-Zero. Reptile reveals he's actually a dinosaur. Just shit like that. And that all sort of comes to life in MK2. And that is the game where I fell in love with the lore. When it wasn't just about Mortal Kombat being a cool game. It's like I actually was affectionately into these characters. So, but like Reptile being playable is just massive. That is such a big deal. So yeah, that's MK2 in a nutshell for me.
I should also mention that MK2 is probably the game that taught me to have good reflexes and taught me how to read inputs like a computer. Jesus Christ.
It took me a long time until I got to that point.
Oh my god.
Like that took years.
I'm still not at that point.
Well, I know like people consider me the gameplay guy, but I didn't actually get good at fighting games till Street Fighter 4. That's when I'm actually like, okay, let's do our research. Let's really try to get good at these things.
I on an arcade cabinet, I have rarely ever made it to Kintaro and never passed him.
Me neither. Yeah.
I've only beaten the game on the home consoles.
I will second that.
Oh my god.
I did play Marvel 2 at the arcades, and I was decent at that game. But being good at something and understanding why you're good are not the same thing.
Look, I intellectually know the trick to get them to, you back up or you jump back to get them to jump kick, and then you can get. I know what you're supposed to do. I could just never get it to work.
After this shit's done, I'm going live and you're gonna watch me. Fucking scrubs.
All right, Cyborg. Oh, wait, actually, not all right. Are we doing MK3 then Ultimate MK3, or are we just combining these things?
Buying them.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a story where, I felt this way about 3 and then Ultimate came out and it was better, because I have that.
Yeah, do whatever fits you, for sure.
I don't have that, but I'm unique in that respect. I'm a minority. But I like them both for different reasons. But nonetheless, I do think we should combine them.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to be talking about UMK3 specifically. Well, first memory, I guess, that goes back to it. So MK2, I didn't really have a first memory that sticks out to me as anything special. We had it on Super Nintendo, like I mentioned in my kind of recap of how all that went down. We had it on Super Nintendo, so that was the first one I remember that we owned. Whereas MK3, I do remember seeing it in video stores to actually rent it. And being like, oh, that looks interesting. I remember being enamored with the logo, just the giant 3 with the Mortal Kombat logo. I thought was kind of cool. But that was the first one I actually recall in arcades, actually. So I remember being, I don't know if it was the video store or the arcade, but I remember it might have been in one of the rental stores where I saw MK3 advertised, and God, it's so it's a memory that's super, super hard to fully see with clarity. So I don't want to misspeak, but I could have sworn it was a cardboard cutout or it was a poster of some sort. And it had somebody that was frozen. I don't know if any of you saw this or if I'm just completely misremembering, but I could have sworn that was one of the first advertisements that I could recall seeing for Mortal Kombat 3. Because that was when, I was obviously aware of the franchise by that point. So that's the first... I'll say that's the first game that I was actually aware of before its release was Mortal Kombat 3. But yeah, as far as the game itself, UMK3 was probably one of the first ones I played in the actual arcade, if not MK2, because I specifically remember seeing somebody pull off the Baraka fatality where he lifts, he stabs them and then they slide down the blades and all that. I remember seeing that as one of the first fatalities I actually saw in arcades. But UMK3, that one is probably the one that I enjoy going back and playing the most still to this day. It's just, I mean, obviously MK9 and MK11 and MKX were a lot more, technical and fun for, first to 5s and first to 10s and playing with all of you guys online and stuff. Those were, that's where I really got into combos and more, tournament level play of actually knowing what the hell you were doing. But going back and playing UMK3 is still the game of my preference of MK in terms of just having fun, loading it up, not having to know every little combo of every character. You can just throw that shit in, and if you don't remember all the special moves off of just the top of your head, you can figure them all out just with a few button presses because they were all similar. And you either forward this, back this, down forward, down back, etc. So you can figure it all out pretty quickly. Yeah, I have a ton of fun with it. As I said before, my friend owned it for Sega Genesis, so I'd go over to his house a lot and play it, and we'd do the 8-person tournament where we each pick half the slots in the tournament play, and then just play that for fun as a way to try all the different characters and whatnot. I love the roster. As a big fan of a lot of those characters in the original trilogy, they have all my favorites there, and that's where I first fell in love with Cyrax for the most part. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun to play. I know a lot of people talk about that as their favorite select screen music or one of their favorites. I like it. It might be my 4th favorite, but yeah, I don't know. I still really favor that more, Asian tech or whatever that Razer explained it as. I love that just more Oriental. I don't know what.
I don't know. I say
it,
like 70s funk.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I like that of the MK1 and MK2, some of the other games, but just I love that a little bit more than more of like the metal, hard type of music that the UMK3 was. Not that it was bad by any means. I thought it was pretty solid too.
Like Gregorian chant. It's got like sort of like an angelic vibe that I really like. It's my favorite, by the way, UMK3.
Sure, yeah. I know like people that are into more like heavy metal and stuff for sure, I think gravitate towards that one. And it's definitely a solid theme for character selection and stuff, and it's pretty badass. But yeah. Love the roster. Love, once again, you got the bright colors and whatnot, and it just flies in the face of anybody that, takes MK a little bit too seriously in terms of thinking that it's, super serious and dark and gritty and can't be colorful, and you can't have silly things like not fatalities, friendships, animalities, all that sort of fun stuff. MK2 and UMK3, they really just encapsulated a lot of that type of stuff, that silliness along with the seriousness and whatnot. So I love it for all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think the biggest nostalgia factor for me is just I really, really, really enjoy the gameplay of UMK3. So that's pretty much it for me.
Faster pace. There's something very sort of slow and stiff about 1 and 2. But I guess like my most, when I think of MK3, there are a couple memories that stick out in my head as like the things that hit me the hardest when I saw it for the first time as a kid. And one of them, I'll never forget seeing Motaro for the first time. I think of the sub bosses, a lot of people have stories of when I saw Goro for the first time as a little kid, I was scared and, intimidated having to fight him. A lot of people have stories like that. I remember thinking, Goro looks cool, and I dread fighting Kintaro because I know he's going to win. But in terms of appearance, something about Motaro, he was the first one that I was actually kind of frightened by. And I'm not sure what it is.
I can totally understand that.
I think it's because he's the best animated of the three. Like, there's something a little bit like grainy and janky looking about Goro's sprite. Motaro is the highest resolution one of the three sub bosses, the original three. So there's that. There's also like I've gone on endlessly about like the impact it had on me of seeing Cyber Smoke for the first time and knowing that a hidden character was finally playable, and how much cooler his like pale indigo color scheme looked to me compared to Sector and Cyrax, and the fact that he was the one who had the spear, because I was pretty salty about them taking the regular ninjas out.
And by, just for clarity, because we got some comments on this before that I tried to correct on Twitter, by hidden character that was finally playable, you mean in the same game, yes?
Yeah. Yeah, no, Reptile does not... Reptile wasn't playable in the game that he was a hidden character.
Right. I'm just clarifying.
It was the first time you could play as a hidden character who was hidden in that same game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah.
Absolutely. So, I won't go over, the impact Cybersmoke had on me too much again, because we've been there. There was another memory that I don't think I've ever shared on the show. And it's from playing the home version. When I was a little kid, I had a specific phobia for like face masks, like prosthetics, anything that would like super deform a person's face. That probably tracks back to when I was like 3 years old and I saw Ghostbusters for the first time and the librarian transformed in the beginning.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
And like I was unwilling to watch that scene like with my eyes on the screen, not like hiding behind the couch or covering my face with my hands. I didn't like force myself, okay, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to prove to myself it's not scary. I didn't do that until I was like in my late teens. So Cabal's unmasking finisher always freaked me the fuck out. And whenever I would be playing on the home console and I would lose to him, I would be like, don't fucking do it. Come on, don't do it. And then he'd do it almost every time. And I'd be like, what the fuck?
Just gonna look out the window for a moment. Nice pretty flowers, bees. Ah! Okay, he's done.
How does this character have a fatality rate seemingly higher than everybody else when controlled by the AI? I don't get it.
It's supposed to be a treat when the AI does a fatality normally, because
Usually you're like, hey, it did the thing, I got to see it. I don't want to see Cabal.
That was the only way you could see it sometimes, that the AI did it, because I'm not going to pick Melina.
Just gonna prey on your fears. That's what it's there for. It's there to prey on your fears, son. Make you a man.
So yeah, that always a little bit traumatized me.
But you pushed through. You got through it.
Yeah, no.
You kept playing Mortal Kombat 3.
I didn't stop playing the game.
You know what? So you don't have to feel alone. I'll freely admit, like, when I was a kid, that Ghostbusters scene kind of freaked me out too, and Cabal Screamer always did make me a little uncomfortable. I remember, like, kind of forcing myself to look away from it a couple of times the first couple of times I played it.
I have another, like, childhood incident about, like, face prosthetics, and it's like when I was like 5 or 6, my parents went to a Halloween party, and my dad was going as like a regular ass lumberjack, and he had like a lumberjack face mask, and it was just like supposed to be a regular dude with a beard.
Oh,
but that mask looked like someone who was like melting and covered in boils and bleeding. There's something wrong with that mask. Scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Since we're on the subject of traumatizing fatalities, I think the most traumatizing fatality for me was MK4 Reptile's fatality, where he eats your face off and then you see like the gnawed up face and it's all red. Like, that one, I think that was the one that just spooked me the most. That was always disturbing.
I think that was the first thing that ever made me think about what it might be like to have no eyelids.
Yeah,
he just pondered it for a few hours.
It wouldn't scare me so much, but it's definitely the most, like, intense MK4 finisher to me.
Yeah.
Like, because it's just such a sudden camera cut from Reptile to the bare face.
Yeah.
The noises he makes.
Exactly. Anyways.
Yeah, but, I don't know. I have a lot of, like, not negative, but I was real disappointed about like some of the aesthetics in 3, the switch to like urban and the lack of the ninjas, and then Ultimate came out, and I'm like, yay, it's Mortal Kombat again. So that's what I remember most about Ultimate, is just the positive feelings of like the outworldy fantasy elements sort of being re-added into the environment. You can go ahead, Shad.
I'm up? All right.
Yep.
Okay, so
Queso.
Eventually... queso. Okay, so... All right.
Sorry.
Pangas. Seriously. He says Pangas at the end of it. I'll explain later. The Jarek clip in MK4 is actually cut off at the end. There's a thing I'll talk about another time. So, eventually, my little video store started facing some hard times, and they shipped off their stock of VHSs right around early 1995. So I was kind of forced to try to find other places to play MK and have that arcade experience. And by that time, EGM and other magazines had been reporting, like, MK3's in development. And I was, like, buying those magazines like crack at that point, and I was just following it along. And, oh, wow, Kano and Sonya are going to be back. And, hey, this Nightwolf dude and this Sindel chick look pretty cool. And basically, I was going to the arcade, like, 3 times a week, hoping to see, like, the first revision of the game show up. And when it finally did, I was there almost every single day. And one of the things that I do remember was that a lot of people straight up fucking hated that game when it first came out. I remember unfavorable comparisons to Killer Instinct in terms of how clunky its combo system felt, like they were just trying to ape what KI was doing. I remember everyone rightfully kind of shitting on it for like removing Raiden and Scorpion and even Johnny Cage. That's what I remember the most at the start of the MK3 cycle was kind of, what the fuck is this game? Like, why is it in the middle of a city? Why are there robots? Where are these people that we love so much? Like, it wasn't all bad. Like, I kind of fell in love with Cabal right away, but it wouldn't be until, like, Ultimate MK3 that, like, I kind of got addicted to the game. But beforehand, though, like you said, there was the whole fact that Smoke was a secret character that you could fight, and that was a lot of fun. Reading the magazines that actually always had, like, little combat codes in them and trying to memorize them, and then finally, the AGM mag comes out. They have the Ultimate Combat Code sitting there, running to my arcade, trying about 3 or 4 times to enter it, and finally succeeding in unlocking Smoke and just fucking having a blast. Being disappointed he's a robot, but happy that he's a secret character and I can finally control him. And learning his horrible, sad history and hoping that one day he'd finally be happy. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting.
I mean, I immediately thought Robot was an improvement, so...
It was different. For many years, I kind of like wavered back and forth on which one I like, and some days I liked one, some days I liked the other one, and I've just, Smoke is Smoke. That's the way I see it now. And I do remember the day when I got a certain issue of EGM which had Scorpion and Katana on the cover. I remember staring at Katana's boobs for about an hour and a half as my dad drove us up.
I think I still have that issue, actually.
My dad drove us on like a long 3 or 4 hour like car ride to like somewhere in like upstate New York, and I just remembered like staring at Katana's boobs for like an hour. I was hitting puberty. It was a good time. And finally that game would finally come out in the arcades, Ultimate. And we get the home versions of MK3 as well, and I remember bringing the home version home and sitting with a friend and turning it on for SNES and playing it for about 10 minutes and going, wow, I need a PlayStation really badly. This is terrible.
Yeah, the home versions were not kind to MK3 and Ultimate.
I have never played the Genesis MK3 in my life, and I'm never going to. The SNES one was ugly enough. It was bad. But finally Ultimate 3 comes out in arcades, and I was there every single day. By that time I'd learned pretty much every fight or two, and it was a big relief to actually have Scorpion. Like, Ultimate MK3 kind of saved that game, I think. Press turned around on it a little favorably, but, there was the feeling that something was lost, because the fatalities were a bit more cartoony, It was the very, very, very beginning of a decline. Very beginning.
Yeah, I appreciate when MK is silly in the obviously non-canon elements. Like, I have no problems with friendships and babalities. But the turn in MK3 towards, like, Jax growing big and stuff like that really never sat right with me as a kid. Like, because fatalities used to be, at least... Even if it wasn't canon that anybody was dying except for, like, Sub-Zero in 1 and Maline in 2, at least there was a feeling of, like, we're getting to see more of the characters' superpowers and what they could do, theoretically.
It took me out of the game to just see people kind of falling apart unrealistically, in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, like, you'd chop a guy in half and his hands would still be floating next to his leg.
Exactly. Or, like, someone had 35 different rib cages, 12 different legs, 10 skulls.
It never felt like a deliberate joke. It felt like a budget problem. Like it was more cheaply made, the gore, compared to the previous 2 games.
Yeah, something was definitely lost. And then you have animalities, and, like, I don't remember anyone looking at those and, like, not laughing over how, like, ridiculous and bad they all looked. They were hideous. It's like, at that point, it felt like they were like, okay, here's the finishers you asked for, and they're absolutely ridiculous. Whatever, we don't know what you want from us.
I mean, it is inherently stupid, the idea that everybody would have an animal that makes sense being associated with them. Like, some characters, sure, I can see, like, Sonya becomes an eagle because Murica. I get the joke. Like, Sub-Zero, Polar Bear, okay.
Reptile, monkey, makes sense.
I don't know what Kung Lao has to do with jaguars, man.
Why is Cyrax a shark? Why is Sector a bat?
Reptile as a monkey's the best.
Yeah.
And
That's
do we
my
mention
favorite
Penguin Scorpion?
thing is my favorite thing is the switch in Vanilla 3 from these glowing outline animals to Ultimate and Trilogy having like completely fully colored animals.
The acknowledgement that these things look like shit, so we're gonna fix them for the ones we're bringing in, but
Yeah, they
can't
only
go
gave
back.
the new characters the better graphics ones. They didn't go back and make the glowing ones look like full animals. So you have both types in the same game.
anyway. It wasn't all that bad of a time. I still had plenty of fun with the game, and I went and I made sure that Melina and Ermac and Classic Sub were unlocked at my arcade, and a lot of fun was had, but it was a feeling that the tide was turning, like people were starting to play like some of the first versus Capcom games, like X-Men versus Street Fighter, stuff like that, and it was a changing of the guard. Like MK was still exciting because the movie was out and whatnot, but I remember not having like as much of a blast with Ultimate and 3 as I did with 2, and that trend would continue. I still had a lot of fun with it though. I suppose I should also, toss in the obligatory mention that like when I got Trilogy to bookend this whole thing on PlayStation, I played the shit out of that for like a good half of a year, like non-stop. Loading times and everything. They drove me insane, but it was worth it to play as Noob Saibot finally, after like all this time with him not ever being accessible.
Yeah. Like it's a shame that Trilogy is looked at as, unbalanced and not the version of 3 that gets to be in all the re-releases and stuff. Because, like, Rain and Noob, for as broken as they are, the ideas of their moves are super cool.
Yeah.
And it was real nice to have them as fully fleshed out characters for once at the time.
And it was even fun to actually play as Motaro, Kintaro, and Goro and Shao Kahn for the first time, too. Fucking ruined Shang Tsung with those loading times, though. I got to play a bit of the N64 version at a friend's place, but not very often. Saw Chameleon once or twice. It was cool. That's it for me and MK3, pretty much.
I'm actually coming from the opposite angle. When I think about my favorite thing about MK3, I couldn't tell you exactly how long it took. It probably took like maybe 2 years, but I felt like we waited for MK3 forever. It felt like that game was never going to be revealed. I think there was even like a patch for MK2 where it said MK3 coming soon, but it was the Roman numeral 3. It still had the MK2 aesthetic.
They did like front load teases very early. Like I remember I had just barely gotten into 1 and 2 and I saw a magazine article that spoiled Jax was going to have metal arms, and then I'm waiting like another year, half a year, however long it was till the game actually came out.
Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy long time. I personally felt the days go by. And it's like, we were just trying to, me and my friends that is, we're trying to imagine what does a Mortal Kombat 3 even look like? And we were all picturing Mortal Kombat 2 on steroids, right? And there was a real shock to when they revealed what it was. And there were robots, right? I did not react negatively to that. My reaction was like, well, of course it's going to be something we don't expect. And honestly, I will say this. There was an article saying that MK3 is in production and it's going to take place back on Earthrealm. I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid. Why the fuck would they do that? And then when they reveal it, I'm like, oh, it's the apocalypse. That makes sense. So I really appreciate, even back then when I was that young, that Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 were just all very distinct animals.
Yeah, I liked the story elements of 3. Like, I liked the idea of seeing Earth openly under attack. It always bothered me how little of there was supposed to be a merger going on. So why does Earth not have some, like, dragons in the sky and some weird all the kinds of stuff that they did different with the stages when they did it in 9 is kind of what I wanted in 3. Except that they, fucked up the rooftop.
I've always really thought that they got hit hard by like public pressure and like having the eye of the politicians on them. And I think that 3 would have been a much darker, more visceral game if they were really allowed to go the way that they wanted to. I think there would have been bodies on the streets left and right. It's not like we hadn't had bodies before.
Yeah, perhaps. I think that's very possible.
I don't know if I needed bodies. I just wanted to see, put some living forest trees growing out of somewhere. Where's the fantasy parts? That's what I was missing.
For me, the power of MK3, at least at the time, was the jump. Same thing with Mortal Kombat 2 in a way. Mortal Kombat 2 was a massive jump, right? You know, it's funny because now I'm the biggest old man when it comes to new characters in fighting games. I'm like, they're adding a whole 4 new characters? Well, look at these pieces of shit. Back then, though, I wasn't like that. I wasn't always like this, right? So, like, when I saw the pictures of Shiva and Cyrax, I couldn't believe how good the game looked. I think time was more kind to MK2 and MK1. But back then, like, in terms of raw fidelity, MK3 looked amazing. Now, my opinion changed once I found out the story. But before I found out the story of MK3, I wasn't sure what to think of the robots. It was very much you know when you pluck flower petals and it's like, she loves me not, she loves me? That's kind of what I was doing with the robots. It's like, they're stupid, but they're also kind of cool, but they're kind of fucking stupid. So that's kind of what I was with Cyrax and Sector, right?
It's a little bit like DBZ abridged Vegeta in the Broly movie. He's so cool, but he's so dumb.
Yes, that's a good description. So I was actually with Shad on Cyber Smoke. I wasn't sure what I like. It's like, man, initially, because they announced one of the 3 characters would be playable. But I was like, well, I already kind of decided I wanted Smoke back as a human. No one told me he was going to be a robot. I think everyone's a little shocked when they find out something they like is now a robot. So I was like, well, this is bittersweet, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And obviously, I love Smoke, where it's Smoke. If he's not my favorite fighting game character of all time, he's like top 4. He is very important to me. Top 4 right next to Psylocke. Anyway.
There's 8 years of podcasts where most of us establish he's very important to all of us.
It's almost like he's a good character.
Have I mentioned how much I love the fact that he beat the shit out of me the first time I ever fought him in 2? And I was like, no, I want more. I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you, Lucky Charms, motherfucker.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Smoke's a big one. You can't talk about MK3 without talking about Smoke. It's just, I've had a very long history with fighting games. I was there for the sunrise of fighting games. I was playing Street Fighter before I played Mortal Kombat. In a Circle K. So I've been there pretty much since the beginning. And Smoke is still very, very important to me. And I think, again, the amount of change they added in MK3 was very impressive. Now, I'm not really the biggest Scorpion fan. I was a big Raiden fan, but I kind of transitioned to liking Sub-Zero more. I think even though I loved playing as Reptile in MK2, I think by that time, before they announced MK3, I was pretty much decided Sub-Zero's my favorite character.
I will say, I never gave a shit about Sub-Zero in MK1 or 2.
Really?
3 was the point. I don't know. I guess it was just like the palette swap thing of, to me, Scorpion was the ninja and Sub-Zero was the knockoff. But once 3 hit and he had his own outfit and, you know, just the mystery of where did he get the scar? Why did he take his mask off? Now I care, you know?
He was marked for death, Razor.
Yes, he was marked for death. So the other thing was his moveset. Like in MK1 and 2, he has like the least special moves, or he's tied for the least with Kano. Like he has 2 moves. He has the freeze and he has the slide. And then he got the puddle. But he's still like everybody else. Like Liu Kang has like 4 moves. Johnny Cage has like 4 or 5 moves. Jax has like 4 or 5 moves. Here's Sub-Zero like piddling around, just freezing people and sliding them. And then, you know, he got the clone and the air freeze in 3. It's like he just completely opened up and was suddenly felt like a full character.
And he was so broken in early versions of 3. Holy shit.
I mean, I still think he's dumb. I think even today, UMK3 Sub-Zero is fucking stupid.
You could actually run up to blocking people, put out an ice clone, and they'd be frozen while they were blocking. It was that bad.
But yeah. that was when they started to switch positions. Like gradually from that point on, Sub-Zero was my favorite ninja. There is something to be said about like the radical changes and the newness that 3 brought, and the fact that like, yeah, we're going to leave all the ninjas out except for that one. Well, suddenly I give a lot more of a shit about that one because he's the one who's still here.
I think it's extremely hard to explain. And I know I've said this previously. I've probably said this 100 times, but it's very hard to explain to people who did not grow up with Mortal Kombat what it was like seeing Sub-Zero permanently without his mask. I don't think you can understand that unless you lived it. That was such a big deal at the time. And that's really my description of MK3 in general. It was the next step. It was such a big chapter for Mortal Kombat. And it was something no one really expected. So when I played it in the arcade, like it was everything I just said colored that experience. Like I said, the game looked amazing. This was kind of right before the time when arcades were sort of losing their clout in terms of the power display.
I would say that MK3 is definitely like the peak of like sprite-based graphics, at least up until we get to the modern day where they're able to like do them in like 64-bit resolution.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I should also mention the fact that MK3's soundtrack was like a revelation. There is something about like being in an arcade and hearing those soundtracks come out of the arcade speakers. You can't reproduce it. There's a certain aesthetic, a certain way it sounds when you're just sitting in front of the machine and it's blaring in your face, and it was really noticeable with 3. Like, the soundtrack really made you sit up and take notice.
There's also, I think, something to be said for, like, the synchronicity, whether it was deliberate or coincidental, that 3 went techno at the same year the movie came out and has this, like, super memorable techno soundtrack.
And fucking seeing Ermac actually acknowledged and made into official character, that was pretty goddamn mind-blowing. You can't forget about that.
It wasn't for me because I did not know who Ermac was. So I thought I met Ermac for the first time in UMK3. I'd never heard the rumor.
I've been mainlining EGM magazines and was like, holy shit, they actually went ahead and did it. Oh wow, he's like a god or something. Yeah, it makes sense.
I don't remember hearing about Ermac or reading about Ermac when MK1 and 2 were out, but when Ultimate came out and Ermac was revealed and all the magazines said this used to be a rumor and now they've made it real, I got it, you know.
For me, it was a holy shit, they actually did it moment.
There's also something to be said about, like, the impact 3 had psychologically, the you had to be there at the time thing with combat codes and the marketing and the way that they'd hide them places. You know, like, there are combat codes not just in the end credits of the movie, but on the wall of a scene in the movie.
Yeah, they were nuts about it. And so many of them. There were more than a few of them that were just all these obscure messages and like bullshit like rain can be found in the graveyard, which is a Prince joke. We all know what that turned into. But then there were just these like messages like, what you gonna do, EB? What you gonna do? Like a gun? Is this a code? What's he talking about? What you gonna do? What does that mean?
There's so much about early MK, especially when we get into 4, that Midway devs just directly putting their completely inside jokes that nobody understands but them all over the face of the game.
And that kind of traumatized the fans all the way up to Deception when we had the super unlockable bullshit.
Super unlockables.
I'll just close out with MK3 saying that probably the irony, the punchline of MK3 is that I thought all the new characters were fucking stupid when the game came out. And now they're almost all my favorite characters.
That's funny because except for Cabal, I thought they were all fucking stupid. And I still think they're all fucking stupid, except Cabal has gotten more stupid over time.
Dude, I love Nightwolf, man. I've really grown to love Nightwolf.
I respect Nightwolf, but I can't say I'll ever be a fan of Nightwolf.
Dude, I think he was... when I saw him in Deception, I didn't realize how much I missed him. Like, it felt so good to see the magazine reveal for Nightwolf for Deception. I'm like, man, that makes sense. Yes, please give me more Nightwolf. I'm excited, right?
Nightwolf is tight. I love some Nightwolf.
Nightwolf.
Gotta get that wolf in there. And you know, with Kung Lao, to me, I thought Kung Lao was stupid in MK2, but he had one of the craziest fatalities I've ever seen. So he got a pass. It's like, I think you're a stupid hat character, but your vitality is fucking ridiculous. You're cool. You're in. We'll unlock the door for you. The way you feel about Nightwolf is kind of how I felt about Kung Lao back in the day. Until I was fucking like, what's the word I'm trying to strong-armed into mating him in MK11. I really the character. Even Stryker. I fucking love Stryker now, man. I love all these characters.
I have grown to appreciate Stryker since MK9 made him like fit and good looking and stuff.
So much hate for that character in the arcades.
I'm okay with Fat Striker.
The amount of times I heard fucking pig cop character.
All I see when I look at MK3 Striker is Chief O'Brien. I can't help it.
That's good. That's why I like Striker. Right? He was actually very popular in my arcade. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Shiva's the only character who I do not look fondly on. I still think Shiva... You know, it's funny. It's actually the first... I thought Shiva was really cool because, like, finally we got a playable Shokan, which, again, is part of that big leap that MK3 felt like at the time. It's just really hard to describe what this game was like. So I'm doing my best, but, like, now it's the reverse. I'm like, we have enough Shokans. You're good, Shiva. Don't trouble yourself. Stay home tonight.
I probably came off earlier saying that I was disappointed when I came out of the arcades, but just that it just felt like it was the beginning of something feeling off. I still had a fucking blast with that game, and I have so many insane memories from it.
I wanted to ask, are we stopping at MK3 or are we stopping at MK4?
I think after 4.
We should go through 4.
Yeah, we'll finish out the arcade era.
All right.
I know a lot of people think that 4 is part of the 3D era, but they're wrong.
Well, it's kind of...
It's the arcade era, then the 3D era. That's
it is
the
a
way
3D
it goes.
game that was released in the arcades.
It's
so
a
it's technically
2.5D
both,
game.
For me, I associate 4 with the first 3 just because the first 4 came out before I turned 18, and Deadly Alliance, I was 18. So those first 4 are my childhood, and the 3D era is not.
I think it works best if we do it as the first 4 and then the 3D era plus MK vs. DC and then the modern ones plus whatever their next one is. I think those are all going to go together pretty well package-wise.
Agreed.
Yeah, that works.
And they have the, like, 4 and MK vs. DC are kind of like the bridge into the in-between.
Yeah, they're both transition games.
Yeah, for sure. Quite literally, because they're like 2.5D, both of them, so they work out really well like that. So are we on MK4 then?
We're on MK4.
Okay, well, you know, at first, when MK4 first came out, it was really odd playing it, just because, you know, just it was so different, obviously, but, like, I think it's a game that's only grown on me over time. Like, I appreciate it more now than I probably did at the time. I played it just recently, actually, like maybe a week and a half ago, with a friend over Fight Cage, and I still enjoy it a lot. It's very different. I think why I can enjoy it so much is because my friend and I, neither of us do like the 3D stepping. So, like, the easy way to avoid fireballs and stuff. We play it as if it's a 2D game, you know, with just 3D models and 3D arena and whatnot, but we're not actually moving in 3D. So I think that kind of helps in that regard. Same with what I did with MK vs. DC and whatnot. Like, just play it as a 2D game and it's far more enjoyable. I don't know. I really love it. I should say it's my favorites of all the select screen themes. So when I said I had a top 3, MK1 was my second favorite. MK2 was my third. MK4 has grown on me to the point where it is my favorites of the select screen themes. It's just so wonderful. And I love Django's remix of it, along with all of his other ones. But just that one in particular, really, really dig. As for other things, I mean, God, I don't know. MK Golds I'm going to throw in there because obviously, much like Ultimate MK3, they're essentially the same game in that aspect. Just an expansion of it. But that's where I first started to... I want to say that's my actual points where I really started to become a Cyrax fan, because I love the story arc of a character going from bad to good. If done right, I really buy in, I guess. I feel sympathetic for the character. And although Smoke, obviously, and Cyrax both kind of had the sympathetic thing, and then obviously Cyrax just completely stole it for the new trilogy. But I really like the idea of a character that was just kind of going along with things out of loyalty, but then eventually comes to his senses and wants his humanity back. I don't know. I really love that, relate to it, I guess, to a certain extent, and just it's always resonated with me. So I think that's where, in his gold ending, where Jax and Sonya, as silly as it is, and then on to Deadly Alliance and whatnot. I think that's where I really, really started to, where he became my favorite character. But yeah, just, I don't know. It's hard to point out specific things in MK4. Like the fatalities are just absolutely like, I love the sound effects. The spine rip, I think that's my favorite spine rip out of the entire series, just because the pulling on it, the yanking away at it, and how it's not just instantaneous. You just hear the breaking and the ripping as he's trying to get the head to come off. Was just perfect to me. So fuck you, Jeff Keighley. But yeah, I really love that one. I love the toasty. That's the one where they run around on fire, right? Like, I love that.
Yeah. He runs around in a circle and then he falls down.
I love that. And then I love how I love the reptile one. Like I said, how that one was the one that was probably the most like disturbing to me as a kid. And God, I'm trying to remember some of the other things that stick out to me. I love Tanya's fatality, where she does the neck break over and over, and it's just disgusting. Like, that one is also pretty brutal. I love the throws in that game and just the bone crunching sounds, and how you just like grab onto their back, break their knees, and they just are sent flying. I love the crazy, the verbiage, the gibberish that they speak. Oh, I'm gonna throw you over there. Go get him, Yato, and all that bullshit.
Oh, my leg.
Oh, my leg. Rock-a-laga. Yeah. So, I mean, that's like top gibberish to me in the franchise. I thought was MK4 was pretty solid. It was good in some of the 3D era stuff as well, but yeah, so that sticks out to me. And then I'd be remiss to not mention the movie endings, which, you know, they didn't like tell you a ton because they were so short. But I mean, man, fans wanted those movie endings back for so long because of just how much they loved them. So yeah, I'm in that camp. I miss the movie endings. The comic endings and whatnot that they've done since Deadly Alliance are also pretty solid, and probably allow them to tell a little bit better story and more in that little bite that you get, and easier to make, I'm sure. But yeah, no, I really love the movie endings, and obviously we've all had so many quips and running gags from MK4. The and the fucking sorry, and yeah, and then the fucking reptile and Baraka. I mean, there's just so much good stuff there in that game. I just feel
I give you the gift of your existence.
Yeah.
My existence?
I am not a god of my word, reptile. All deals are off.
I'm telling you, man, there is, like, out of all the games, I think there's two in the series. Deception might be the other one, but obviously we're not getting to that yet. But out of all the games, it just has a certain, I want to say it has a certain charm to it. Like, that they all have a charm to it, but MK4 and MK Gold specifically just has, like, this unique charm to it, that where it's like, not to offend anybody, but the redheaded stepchild of the bunch, where it's like,
it totally is.
It's like the ugly duckling, you know. It's just kind of like this weird like thing. Like, a lot of the characters that were introduced, people didn't like you know, Jarek and such like that, and Fujin to a degree for a long time, until people really started getting on his bandwagon, and Reiko or whatever. And just, yeah, I don't know. I just have really grown to appreciate MK4 over time, and it's really stuck with me. So yeah, I think, like I said, to kind of, if I could put one word to it, it's just like a charm to me. So that's it.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you said, with the exception that 4 didn't have to grow on me. It's always been one of my favorites. Like, I played the shit out of 4 on the N64, and I had a Dreamcast, and I played the shit out of Gold. And the select screen theme is my favorite theme. There's a reason I chose that for the Lost. The roster is completely devoid of all of the MK3 characters I didn't like. You know, they only brought back the Cybers and Gold, so, like, I don't have to look at Nightwolf's stupid face.
Dang.
Damn. Nightwolf on blast.
But yeah, it's always been like, Underappreciated, I would say. The thing that I loved about it immediately and was just the return to the MK2-ish aesthetics. You know, it's not so urban anymore. There's, you know, sort of like the fatalities. There's still a silliness to them, but none of them are outright a comedy bit like Giant Jacks. There's just a sense of like a return to sort of the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy aesthetic.
Right. Yeah, I really see that.
I really was drawn to. And you know, we've complained before about like the elaborate nature of modern fatalities, and 4 was kind of the start of that, but it's different to me in 4 that the use of old classic finishers with the camera angles is like the perfect middle ground. Like, that's what I want. I kind of wish Brutalities had a little more camera work. You know, that they were still the same quick kills with the same, you know, the use of like retro finishers. They generally come back as brutals now instead of fatalities. And I like that. I just wish there was just a little bit more pageantry. You know, you can have the angles and the animations and still keep it fast and have it happen naturally as the end of a special move, or, you know, have this scripted event happen because you did a specific requirement in the middle of the fight.
Right.
And that's sort of like, I would say 4 has the best fatalities.
Interesting.
And I also, like, I appreciated that 4 was the first game where the ninjas weren't palette swaps, even though, like, yes, they did reuse a lot of costumes from previous games. It wasn't lazy because they still had to make them from scratch because they were switching from digitized actors to actually making 3D models in a computer.
It's more of an N64 problem. It's more of like a console problem than it was from the arcade. The arcade, you're right, it's all fresh for the most part.
What I like about it is the costumes then become a character statement. Like, Scorpion is wearing the MK3 outfit because that's Scorpion's outfit. Sub-Zero is wearing the Mythology's outfit for a story reason. He's honoring what his brother wore when he fought Quan Chi and Shinnok, you know? Kitana's still wearing the UMK3 outfit, but Melina's got a new one. So I guess the UMK3 outfit belongs to Kitana. You know, it's sort of... It's said that these clothes are choices, and not just everybody in a category has to dress the same for real-world limitation reasons. And that still speaks to me. Like, in my brain, the UMK3 outfit is Scorpion's outfit. It's not all the ninjas, it's him. But yeah, I don't know, like, there's just something about 4 that I still feel like... It's funny because 4 has the most undercooked, like, story, but something about that is endearing to me too. Like, as kind of a guy who enjoys like fan fiction and theory crafting, I almost enjoy the blank slate of it. Like, I could stick whatever I want in there and it would fit because nobody said it couldn't.
I'm glad you have that confidence.
I want you to picture Quan on the side of the 4 arcade machine just staring at you after you've said that.
I did that.
I mean, that's a pretty good description of MK4, if I'm being honest. Like, that's essentially how I feel about that game.
Quan staring into your soul.
Well, that or just MK4 bending over because anything can fit.
Well, I mean, I don't know. A big part of 4's identity is Rich DeVizio dressed as Quan Chi, isn't it?
Huge.
That's the first thing I think of when I think of that game is Rich DeVizio, Quan Chi, in that outfit, making them faces. There's a reason that we have like 20 Quan Chi emotes on our Discord.
He was the start of it.
I don't know, it's just... I think of MK4 and all I think of are positive memories. I really have almost no negative things to say about that game, which is rare for me with a Mortal Kombat.
Savor it. Treasure these moments.
As if they were my last.
Is that it?
Yeah, what do you got?
Oh, geez, buddy. So, continuing the arcade era days stories. Well, by 1997, I was kind of in full-on weeaboo mode and spray painting my hair silver and running around in a snakeskin trench coat.
As you do.
As you do when you're growing up.
We've all been there.
I wish I could see it.
No.
You don't have any pictures from that time, or you refuse to share any pictures from that time?
I think someone might. I don't know if they're still in existence. I don't have any of them. I didn't do the silver hairspray thing for more than like a week, though. The snakeskin trench coat was a very long-standing mistake, however. But anyway, the first memory I want to share about MK4 is the fact that around my arcades, sadly, no one gave a shit. No one. People were at that machine for like the first 1, maybe 2 weeks, and then like they dropped off. Like people were playing Street Fighter 3, they were still playing Marvel vs. Capcom, the Versus games, and just nobody cared. Nobody. And I want to clarify, like, I had a lot of fun with it too, but my reaction to it was a really mixed one. Like, I was happy that the atmosphere was kind of like you said, back in that MK2 space. We had that fantasy sci-fi horror thing going on, and it felt a lot darker and more gothic than it had ever had, actually, in ways. And I was a big fan of the 3D fatalities too. But at the same time, God, that maximum damage mechanic was so lazy and shit and garbage. And where the fuck was everyone? Like, yeah, the story was very bare bones, but that was the start of me wondering for many years, where the fuck is half the cast? Are they dead? I guess they're dead, guys. Who fucking knows? Would be years before we find out what happened to Smoke or Ermac or, like, anyone, and this was the start of people wondering for fucking years, is Reiko Shao Kahn or not? That was a long-standing mystery. I had a fair bit of fun with it. I enjoyed the 3D endings for the time, but again, like, the magic was just a little bit lost, but I had a lot of fun with it for what it was worth. I remember that first week that people were like, oh wow, Noob Saibot's actually in the game now, and then like Reiko shows up one day and like Noob's gone, and who the fuck's this guy? That was hilarious.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the hard time MK4 had, I think, is that it was the first arcade game that basically got released in beta as like a wide release. Like, in previous builds of their arcade games, they just released them in the Chicago area for testing, and then they'd finish them before, they went worldwide. But with MK4, you'd go to random arcades all over the country, and one of them would have Noob Saibot with a roster of like 8 to 10 people. The next one you'd play is like the full roster, but everybody only has one fatality. It was never like a consistent finished game experience.
No. That would actually continue throughout its entire lifespan, I would honestly say, even at the very end of it.
Yeah.
It died off at the arcades in pretty short order, and like as soon as it came out on PlayStation, I found myself playing it like a lot at home. Sometimes with friends, but mostly alone. I went through like the single player mode so fucking often, more than I remember. At the same time, I was also playing Mythologies here and there when I could stand to touch it. Having a disc but no manual. That was painful.
I bought the strategy guide for that game when I bought that game. I didn't even know I'd need it so much. I just liked having strategy guides, but that game is unplayable without. Like it's a game that's designed to sell the strategy guide
inside and out. I don't know how I fucking managed it without a strategy guide, and I think I swore I'd never do it again. But anyway, so I had a lot of fun with it, but just not as much fun as I'd ever had with like 2 or 3,
Yeah, I get that.
It really was starting to feel like a lot of the magic was gone in some ways, and I was happy to see certain things like, Scorpion Sub aren't palette swaps anymore. We've kind of moved on from that, because at that point in time, the jokes were really building up, like Mortal Kombat has like 12 characters, but half of them are the same fucking guy. You'd hear things like that, and you'd have jokes like Brickor, the Brick Ninja, Radon, the Radioactive Ninja, and all your smart-ass, like, video game magazines at the time, and,
Yeah.
Street Fighter gets away with having 25 guys in gis with the same fucking moveset, but, that's okay. Cool.
Yeah, in my area, the arcades were already starting to die in general, so I wasn't, feeling like there was something wrong with MK4. I was more feeling like, okay, the PlayStation 1 exists and everybody has one. Clearly, we're moving to home console stuff, and this was maybe Midway's a little bit behind the times giving this one an arcade release. And it would still be like 5 years before Deadly Alliance when they figured it out,
Let's see what else to remember. I remember people using like Game Sharks and whatnot to like unlock a beta version of Katana that was in the game code in the PS version.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That was fun. Then Gold comes out and it's broken and buggy as shit. But we got our Cyber Ninjas back and that was a lot of fun, and it was nice to play it. It's something closer to the way the arcade felt because the PS version still wasn't completely there, almost, but not quite. My memories of MK4 are mostly fun, but I was never impressed by Shinnok. Jarek sucked from day one. I liked Kai. Fine. I liked Fujin. But there really was a sense that, like, something was missing.
I liked the idea of Shinnok. It took a long time for his costume to not suck.
True that. But it was still a good time. I had a lot of anticipation for it, like, Mortal Kombat going 3D was a big fucking deal. It felt like we had nowhere else to go but up after 3 happened, but the reality of it was, I don't know, Tekken was happening at the same time, and I think in certain ways it just kind of never lived up to the shadow of like what Tekken was doing at the time, and that was the start of some form of decline. Some form.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever fell out of the public eye completely until like after Special Forces almost murdered it. That and Annihilation, like 1997, 1998, that's when things start taking a bit of a downturn, just a bit for the series.
Yeah, but there was still media keeping it alive until like at least 99. The thing is, now we look back on the time between Special Forces and Deadly Alliance as this huge gap where we weren't sure MK was ever going to come back. In retrospect, it's the same size gap as we get between each game now. It's just there's a lot more communication, and sometimes there's a DC superhero game in between, so at least we know what NRS is doing.
Well, like, we also heard that John Tobias had left the company. We were like,
yeah.
Are they going to keep doing it without him? And maybe even they were wondering that for a while.
I think story-wise, there's also an element of, like, so 3 ends with the series' big bad defeated, and 4 was to introduce a new, even bigger bad, and he kind of fell flat, and he's defeated at the end, too, and it's just sort of like, is there going to be some kind of power scaling? Can they think of a villain bigger than an Elder God to fight in the next one? Or have we seen, like, the natural conclusion and the Earth is finally safe? That kind of thing.
Yeah, they defeated Boo, basically. It's like, what do you do now? You bring back Frieza. So, yeah.
I think that's it for me, Temp, pretty much. I have nothing but great memories of MK4, but there was that sense that things were changing.
Yeah, MK4, I always say, is probably my least favorite of the arcade era. I don't know if I still feel that way, just because if I actually was forced to play the games, I probably don't have a lot of interest going back to MK1. I think MK4 does win out in that regard. But MK4 had a lot of problems. I think visually it's aged the worst out of all 4 games. Just easily the worst looking. But I will say, when it came out, I was initially very positive on it. I was very excited. We had a 3D Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was the last into the 3D fighting genre, so I was cool with that. It was cool seeing Sub-Zero as a classic ninja with the scar, even though that's not what he looked like when I first played the game. Because when I first played the game, there were 3 giant metal question marks in the middle of the screen. So yeah, it's that was cool when they eventually did it. I like the fact that everyone looked different. My favorite things about MK4 are Shinnok and Fujin, by far. Those 2 characters saved the game. I even thought Shinnok looked cool back then. He looked like the evil Mortal Kombat Pope. I looked at him and I immediately knew what they were going for, and it's fine. He's like this weird Elder God Pharaoh thing. Yeah, it's cool. I like it. And I still like it. Literally nothing on that has changed. But everything else around MK4, opinion-wise, was completely unstable. The game, my opinion, just kept changing with every iteration, and just like, by the time everything was said and done, my favorite thing about arcade MK4 was the Marvel vs. Capcom machine across from it at Tilt. And yeah, that's kind of that's the ending of MK4, really. But that was the beginning of my fighting game career. Like I said, it wasn't until Street Fighter 4 that I knew what I was doing. Like, I didn't know about frame data when I played Marvel 1. All I knew was that there are crazy combos that I can't do, and I need to learn those combos. And once I learned those combos, I was able to beat people I never thought I'd be able to beat. And that's kind of where my real deep love for gameplay came from, was Marvel 1, right? So, yeah, I would say probably MK4 is my least favorite, though, in terms of just overall presentation. I don't have a lot to say about it, to be honest with you. I really didn't like the fact that a lot of MK3 got thrown away. I was like, where the fuck is Smoke? And we waited 8 years for Smoke to come back. Think about that. Really think about that. Took 8 years to find out what happened to my favorite character. It really instilled this conviction in me that if something is good about something, you don't throw it away. And that is why I get so fucking salty when they add like 8 new characters to Street Fighter 6. Well, I'm sorry, those characters are going to be DLC. 7 new characters to Street Fighter 6. Fucking Ed. Anyway, so yeah, I really just, I don't like seeing good things thrown away. At least, unless there's a really good reason. Which is why I always deeply resented the Combat Kids. I promise this isn't just going to be about Street Fighter 6. But the fact that Street Fighter 6 is doing the Combat Kid thing too, although they've been doing it for a while, it's just really frustrating to me.
I mean, to be fair, I believe Street Fighter 6 is going to be like 5. It's going to have like a 8-year alive cycle, and you're going to get like 6 packs of characters after the ones that we already know about.
I mean, I don't want to be playing as Q in my mid-40s, man. Like, I don't know how long I can play fighting games.
You will take El Fuerte and you will like it.
I like El Fuerte. El Fuerte's tight. He likes to cook.
I want to be playing as Q in my mid-40s. I want to be playing as Q one more time before I fucking die. That would be really nice.
I might not have hands when Q is finally released. I might be in a coma. I might be dead.
These are all realistic concerns.
I might have a very, very unreasonable wife who does not let me play Street Fighter. She'll let me play everything else, but not Street Fighter, right? I don't know. I can't. I have no idea what's in the future. So, like, when people tell me, don't worry, they'll release your favorite character in 4 years. First of all, you don't know that. But second of all, well, this was supposed to be about MK4, wasn't it? But second of all, I don't know if I'm even going to be around in 5 years, right? So, I think I've done enough waiting for fighting games. I've been doing this for a long time, guys. So with MK4, I didn't like the roster. I really didn't like my favorite things about MK3 being thrown away. But we're talking about our favorite things about these games, right?
Yes, this was supposed to be positive.
Yes, indeed.
We're sharing memories. Most of mine are pretty good, but you know, I've shared the weird, sad feeling that was kind of watching your series start to fade from the public eye. So it doesn't have to be...
I get that, but at the same time, like, Tanya and Reiko and Fujin and Quan Chi are some of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. Like,
I found myself attached to them pretty quickly.
And I never liked, like, Nightwolf and Stryker and Sindel and Shiva, so... I can't help. 4 felt refreshing to me. I was like, we're back. You know, it's Mortal Kombat again. I was really happy.
You know what, like, the one memory about MK4 that stands out to me more than anything else is, I think?
What's that?
It's that alternate outfit for Noob Saibot where he's like some sort of weird gray alien with a skull. And I just remember staring at it and just constantly picking at it and going, is this a joke, or is this what he actually looks like under
his
there?
bare chest, like, melds into his pants. Like, it's a gradient instead of a belt.
To this day, I wonder about that costume. I have so many questions. That alternate costume for Scorpion, where he's just completely gray, but he has a skull face, so it felt like they were saying Smoke's dead, Shad. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. But yeah, the alternate costumes were really fucking cool for the first time you could do shit like that.
Yeah, 4 was the first game with alternate costumes.
Johnny Cage in a tux, Liu Kang with like the Chicago street gear or something he was wearing.
No, that was Kai. Liu Kang had like a Chinese silk shirt and his hair was in a ponytail, a white headband.
Yeah, that was it. That shit was awesome.
You know, it's funny about that gray Scorpion costume. I didn't interpret that as Smoke was dead. I interpreted that as we wanted to make a better looking Smoke costume, but, you know, something came up, so this is what you got. It was very much we were going to take you to Disneyland, but Disneyland burned down. That's kind of what I took from that costume, right? Yeah, I guess the positive thing about all this is MK4 came at the perfect time, and it had a hell of an impact, much like MK3. Because I was just so fatigued on Mortal Kombat 3. And all of us, when I say all of us, I mean my friends group at the time, were just begging for a Mortal Kombat that did not play or look like MK3. We were just tired. And I think this kind of feeds into what Razor was saying about going back to the fantasy. We were kind of done with fucking like urban streets and skyscrapers. You know, we were ready for something different because we've been doing that for so long. Yeah, that was really the best part about MK4 is that it ended probably the longest drought, not in terms of time, but in terms of just waiting. I think the longest drought probably was Deadly Alliance, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, that was good. I will always give MK4 credit for that, and for Fujin, and for Shinnok. I think when I said years ago that MK4 was my least favorite MK game, I've kind of had to change perspective where I'm trying to find the good in things, and I need to remind myself that I'm judging a game I've not played in 15 years. So I do try to keep an open mind. But waiting 8 years for Smoke to come back has never left me. I'm never going to forget that till the day I die. Anyway, that concludes MK4.
All right. Well, it sounds like this is going to be our breaking point, and planning on following this up with the remainder of the games in the next couple weeks. So tune into that. Hopefully, we do sometimes have a track record of just not recording and never pretending like it just did not exist. And
I think we can manage to get together sometime in the next 3 weeks.
Ew.
Oh God!
If for some reason it doesn't happen, I just want to say one more thing about MK4. One reason why I didn't like it is because Quan Chi was the face of that game, and Quan Chi is bald. So that was always a point.
I just remembered something. As a Shang Tsung fanatic, Quan Chi's existence offended me for years. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, Shang Tsung had nice flowing hair.
I never had a problem with Quan outside of 9. I like Quan Chi. I especially like the MK4 outfit Quan Chi. Like, I like him a lot better than bare-chested Quan from every game after.
I just remember thinking, though, like, we have a sorcerer. He's a good sorcerer. Why do we need another one? You're saying Shang Tsung's not good enough?
Well, I always really appreciated them, like, drawing a line between what spells Shang can do that Quan can't, and vice versa.
Yeah. We'll get into that when we touch Deadly Alliance, but like that went a long way towards legitimizing them both as existing in the same universe in my eyes. I think.
But it's a real clear delineation right from the beginning of like the story has stopped talking about people stealing souls. So obviously the new villains are not soul stealers. There's a different thing going on. Outworld could not raise the dead. Hell can. You know, this is a different type of invasion. It's not, you know, these bladed monsters. It's zombies and skeletons.
Spooky.
Bald. All right,
sorry,
take us home, Cyborg.
I was getting a tear in my eye. This is like vintage Nethercast. I start to close the episode, then you guys another tangent. This is like
happy anniversary, guys.
Again. You can.
It's like we never left. All right, okay, but yeah. So look forward to a follow-up episode where we cover the remainder of the games and, I don't know, get into anything else that we might want to bullshit about. But thanks everybody for tuning in, and see you when we see you. Happy 30th anniversary.
Happy 30th.
Take care, everybody.
Happy 30th, nerds.
All right.